Now, today we are going to discuss a little comparison again between flat file database and a relational database. We'll also look into different terminologies of databases, and we will also um see different concepts regarding relational databases. Now, in flat file databases, data retrieval is comparatively faster because data में लिखते तो साथ में data retrieval is faster. Why? Because there is only one file, so and not much processing is required, and easier for a human to read. So ये easier का word, as I always say, is not a good one to use, but if you put some reason over here, easier to read as data is in ASCII format. There are so many other flaws, like data entry is slow. You can't automate a lot many things, and there is data redundancy, duplicated data, which makes the file size larger, and unnecessary utilization of hardware resources like memory. And there is also data inconsistency, uh, which is can occur, as you will be storing data at different locations, same data at different locations, so data might become inconsistent. And there is a lot of data dependency. These are more or less same points that I discussed in the last. A lot of data dependency. The program is dependent. When you code your program, you first look how data is organized, and in that way you program your you code your program. But this is not the case in databases. You can just create a structure, and later on you can always code your program in any way you want, and you don't have any access level control, and there is no feature such as queries and reports. You have to code each and everything yourself. Sorry. So one has to code each and everything. Please take a snapshot of this, because what I did is I just annotated instead of writing on the board. Let me just pause it. Okay. So number of files, number of files are used in flat file, whereas there is just one single file as in database. Within the database there are many tables and objects, and as the data is getting duplicated, it become inconsistent in flat files, and this makes processing of data slow, whereas we avoid data duplication or data duplication or redundancy. So this makes a system efficient, but we cannot completely avoid duplication. To some extent, we still need little duplication of data. Otherwise, the program the data will not get linked. So for the linking of the data, थोड़ी सी duplication चाहिए होगी. The volume of data is large over here. It considerably reduces size of data, because duplicated data is needed to be recorded only once. And so um, most of these I discussed in the first lesson of databases, the issues, and then become. Now let's come on the some of the terminologies that we need to memorize and understand. First is DBMS, Database Management System. Now, it is a software that allows us to manipulate database or data so that users could access and manipulate and view in the way they want to view the data. We will store data in the at the back end, so you can understand it. There are three, four things. One is the back end where data is stored. Then there is a middle time where things are getting connected and the processing is being done, and there is a front end where a user interacts. So there is a storage area, and then there is a process area, and then there is an interface for your simplicity. So the user interact with the interface and they ask question, or they ask database to process something on their behalf, and then data is extracted or stored and manipulated from the storage. And this is all here. The data is in raw format, and everything is done by the engine, the processor, the brain behind this database. So data um, is organized into tables, viewed in forms, retrieved using queries, and displayed in reports. It usually refers the following facilities. Number one, database design and query. Database design and query design. Two, database design and query design. And then data definition language, which is also known as DDL, to define tables. And let me reduce it a little bit. Then number three is data dictionary, which is known as DD, that describes the tables, relationships, indexes, along with the rules for integrity and validation. And then we have data manipulation language, which is also known as DML. This is the one that does everything for our insertion and deletion and extraction and modification, all that stuff. So this everything is done by actually a query tool. I'll tell you in a while. And then backup features. Number six, controlling multi-user environment. And then providing security. Actually, at the back, there is one thing that is known as query language. We call it SQL, structured query language, which is actually the programming language that helps us in do each and everything in our databases. And nowadays we have an option of query by example, QBE, query by example. Let me narrate it. Query by example. This thing has made our databases even easier to handle. And the next terminology that we need to understand is data modeling. So a model represents kind of a structure in reality. And the modeling process fixes a perception of structure of reality and represents the latter one. In data modeling, we select the aspect and we abstract out of it. If you remember that I started my lesson with that when we create a database, we look into the scenario and we try to find out what we want to do. And out of that many data, a lot of data in the reality, we pick up only relevant data and we create files. Likewise, in our Access example, I only stored some information in the Access tables that were required. So actually what happens, we create a schema. Schema means it defines its entities and relationship among them. Database schema is a detail about of the database, which can be depicted by means of schema diagrams. And वो सारी एक्टिविटीज जो हमें डिजाइनर को करनी है इस डेटाबेस को क्रिएट करने के लिए, that is explained in schema. And you can look of one logical schema and the other is physical schema. Let me erase it. The other is physical schema. The logical schema is basically the design that the database administrators and the programmers are going to implement so that what the design thought by somebody is actually implemented. And once the data is stored, it is stored as a physical schema, as a physical design. So if I could show you here in the book what the book is telling. Let me share the book. So here you see there is something known as the external level schema, which is how the interface is working, and then how it is conceptually designed, and then how it is internally stored. So the process is defined in different in different stages. So first we need to know that what we want to do, what are external programs, how it will internally implement and store the data in a physical location. So this is what is how we define our database. Okay, now quickly I would like to come on to the real things that we have to look into so that we can understand what kind of questions in exam are going to appear. I'm going to share some notes with you also so that you can study a little more than what is given in the book. Let's come on to those exam related terms that you might see in your exam. Now, the first term that we must understand is tables, or in other words, files. This is the place where we store information about one entity, one object. Like, for example, in library, members is one table, books is one table, and issue is another table. These tables contain records. And let me just put one record, the word record. In another word very commonly used is tuple. So tuple means it is a record of one object. In table, there will be many records, and one record will be made up of many pieces of information. Like if I say there is a student ID 1, student name Ahmed, student address 124 Gulberg 3, for example, and then contact number and date of birth. So these pieces of information collectively describing one record, one tuple. It is known as one tuple. So one object's information stored in a table is known as record. And these records are made up of fields, and the word very commonly used as attribute. So attribute is you may say one complete info, and this means one small piece of info about an object. So student ID is one piece of information. Student name is one piece of information. The third thing is primary key, also known as key field. So when we create a table, what we need to do is we need to must have one key field in our table. Now, what is key field? Field or attribute that uniquely let me just erase it. Identify one record. For example, let's say I can give many examples. One example, student ID. It is going to describe one student, complete record. So you have to see which field or piece of information should be kept as ID primary key field. Then vehicle registration. It describes one car. Like my car has a number LEH 164197. So it means it has a complete description, and the short code is telling its ID. My national ID card number describes one person. And anything that is uniquely identifying everything, like passport number, it again describes one person. Employee number, it also describes one employee. So in exam, you will be asked by the examiner that these are 3 or 2 or 4 tables. Identify the key fields. And sometimes situation occurs where one field cannot be uniquely used to identify a primary field. So then we use two fields to uniquely identify a primary field. I'll come on to that in a short while. Now, another terminology is known as foreign key. As I mentioned, in databases, we store the unique records. Normally, I call them as profiles of entities, or let me just, instead of entities, let me say objects, profiles of objects in separate files, and transactions of these files, these objects, transaction of these objects in separate files. Now, how come I am going to know that which record has which transactions? Let me just first of all first create a table over here, and let me put only 3 records: student ID, name, and contact, for example. And one is Ahmed, contact is this 2, 3, 4, 5. Qasim, Rahim, Ahmed, it's another person, Ahmed, and Zahid. And these have some contacts like this, for example. And how many meetings I have made with them. Now, for this, I might create a meeting ID and student ID and date. So I'll say one has made meeting 1 was with student 1 on a specific date, then 2 with student 2 on a specific date, then 3, meeting 3 was again with student 1 on a specific date, then I made another meeting with 3 meeting 4 was another meeting with the same student on another date, and then there was meeting 5 with student 2 on another date. So when I will fetch record, how I will know that from a separate table, individual table, I will not know that student ID has how many meetings been set for that person. And from here, when I come, I do not see that this one has what detail. So to have a complete detail, like I want to see that student 1, Ahmed, contact this, like I will have to create a record. So I say student 1 has these 3 meetings. Student 1 on a specific date, 1 on a specific date, and one, or I can give numbers, meeting IDs like 1, 3, and 4. Meeting 1 was with that on a specific date, meeting 4. So kind of things happens. Same way, in the same way in exam, when you see that at the top of a result card, you see profile of the student, and then here the grades of the students are being shown. Now these grades are stored in a separate file, and the profile of the student is stored on a separate file. But to bring these into at one place as a just view, as a report, we have to link those. So to link these, what we have to do, one, in the master table we have to create a primary field. So here I will create as student ID is the primary field, and here I will also have the student ID, but this will be my foreign field over here. So my computer database will let me link the student ID with the student ID, and in this way my linking will be created, and I can easily now fetch data from different tables into one table. So this is known over here. This field is known as a primary field, and here I've kept this field as a foreign field. So अभी मैं इसको practically भी आपको करके दिखाऊंगा, but for the time being, please remember the definitions that primary field, or the word key field, is the one that keep this word as a hint, uniquely identifies the whole record in the table. So likewise, a student Ahmed is given 1, so this 1 ID cannot be given to another student, and there is a field known as foreign field or foreign key. So the simple definition is this is the one that is used to link the record in the profile table, or you may say master table, whatever. So foreign key is stored in another table, and this field must be a primary field in another table. So if I just show you this screenshot over here, check this out. Now here you see that we have a table department over here. We have a table department, you can see over here, and there is a department ID, and you can see the department ID is a primary key, and it is linked with teacher department over here, and making it one to many relationship हम बाद में पढ़ेंगे. But here this is a foreign key field, and likewise this teacher ID is a primary, and teacher in the table classes, it is linked with class seats. So it is foreign key over here, and here it is a primary key. And here you see that, let me just erase a little bit. Here you see the class ID is primary, and student class over here is primary, a foreign key. So this is linked with this is linked with this, and this is linked with this. So the data of one object is divided into multiple tables, and by doing this we have avoided duplication, and with the linking we can now easily see कि किस चीज की क्या transactions हैं और कहाँ पर हैं. So unless we do not have primary fields and foreign fields, we will not be able to link our database, our information stored in different databases. Okay, Ji, let's go through quickly some of the terminologies that we have seen and will see in this presentation also. We need to store information about things, or more technically entities. To store data about things, we use tables. Example of database: crime in a local area. So the tables that we might create instead of one single flat file: crimes, victims, criminals, police officers. Now if you see here that in police officers table we'll be having unique records. Obviously, once a police officer has been given an ID, that ID will not be given to any other person. So it means this is a profile table. Like with criminals, a criminal with this ID cannot be a criminal ID C1 cannot be given to another criminal. So it means this table is also going to be a profile table. Likewise, victims is going to be a profile table. And all these will have one field as primary field, or you may say key field. This is a must, although all tables will have some kind of a key field. This table will have many crimes in it by each victims, or this table will have many affectees, victims. This table will have many criminals involved in crimes, and this table will have many police officers looking into different crimes. So this table will or may have a key field, but it will definitely have foreign fields, foreign key field in this crime table. So if in nutshell I say these three earlier ones, these ones which I discussed are the one which contain profiles, and this contain transactions, or you may say repeated records. Affected many, one person may get affected many times, become victim. A criminal doing many crimes, a police officer looking into investigating many crimes. So we instead of storing all this information in one flat file, we have divided, and because of division we have saved a lot of space. Now let me show you that if we have created on a flat file, what would have happened. It is difficult to create a flat file in this small space, but let me just try it, and if I could explain you what the flat file is doing. Now this will be let's suppose a crime ID, and this will be victim ID, victim name, and victim detail, और बहुत सारी होगी ना. इस तरह से victim criminal ID and criminal name and many more criminal detail, and likewise police officer ID, police officer name, and lot many detail. So when I will say that crime ID 1 by victim ID is 1, the affectee, and the victim name is let's suppose A, B, C. Victim detail like address is 1, 2, 3, 4. Crime did by the criminal ID was let's suppose crime 1. Name maybe XYZ something, and a lot many detail. And police officer 1, police officer name something detail. Now on the second crime, maybe again the same victim, and now we are again putting the same detail of the maybe the criminal is also same, and the same detail, and maybe police officer is same and same detail. So you see that a lot of information is repeating again and again. Either you see at this side or you see at this side. So this is known as redundancy. This is known as duplication. We have to avoid this. So because of the flat file, many objects information is stored at one place, and because of that we have duplicated data. एक थोड़ी सी और क्लियर एग्जांपल आगे आएगी, तो फिर हमें थोड़ा सा फ्लैट फाइल का और पता चल जाएगा, and then we'll understand a lot. This is definitely a complex topic, and in the coming lessons you will have more clarity. So in double criminal, I have to decide which pieces of information is required. Maybe the name, date of birth, number of scars, and hometown is enough. Maybe I do not need information like marital status. I don't need this from the criminal. Maybe there might be many more information relevant to this criminal, but we might not need it in the criminal database. So what we have done, we have abstracted only relevant information. Likewise, in the crime table, we need some information that who's the number of the criminal, or maybe the affectees, the victim's ID, and a description and crime, type of crime, and many more pieces of information. So once we are analyzing, we have to find out which attributes or fields we need in our entities tables. So this is a very important analysis that is done by administrators. Now there are many more databases that we can see in our real life. Social network, in that we could see people, relationships, messages, and pictures. As you see, there is a profile on the Facebook about a person, and that person's um, friends, that person's messages, pictures, and videos. Many information would be stored in different places. And as mentioned, a primary key is a field in a table that contains unique data. So in this table, we need to identify which field should be primary key. If you have any idea, can you tell me that which should be the primary field in this criminal table? अच्छा, मुझे बताएं कि इस primary key field के अंदर कौन सी field इस criminal table में कौन सी field को primary field होना चाहिए? जी, नेशनल आईडी कार्ड नंबर, क्योंकि जो बताएगा कि 1 ये बंदा है, 2 ये बंदा है, 3 ये बंदा है. So this will help us in uniquely identifying record. And inshallah, in the next class, I will tell you that how database does it when we create a field as a primary field. So we need to decide out of this. Quickly, you would have decided that national ID card number is string, but why? Hometown. Now, hometown cannot be made a primary field. Why? Because it is not unique. At one hometown, many criminals may be living. Number of scars, many criminals may have same number of scars. Many criminals may have same date of birth. Many criminals may have same name, but each criminal will have a different ID card number. So national ID card number. So this is going to be unique. So that's how we decide which field is going to be unique. And the data dictionary, or the structure of the table that we write is in this way. We give the table name, and then one of the attribute is underlined. As you can see here, it is underlined. It is telling that this attribute is primary key, and then you list down the primary key. So for here, the criminal table is listed out like this. National ID card number, which is underlined, so it means it's a key field or primary field, whichever we say. Name, date of birth, number of scars, and hometown. Now in exam, you will be given the description about the table in this way, and then some questions might be asked. Like for example, this would have not been underlined by examiner, and examiner will say, identify a primary key. Now for you, I write here, I create a table over here, and I say student ID, name, date of birth, and address. That's it, for example. Now, here you see that there is a table and some description about the table. Now, you can easily identify which field is going to be primary field, which field should be underlined as a primary field.
Student ID.
Student ID. So exam में आप इसको underline कर देंगे इस वाली को यहाँ पर. So this is how questions appear in exam about table. Sometimes examiner may ask you, okay, these are the fields in criminal table, add some more fields. So by thinking and analyzing, you may find some more fields that you can add. Maybe you may say criminal's father name, for example. Criminal's place of birth, maybe. Kind of field which you have to think of, and then you will add in the exam. So there is a chance, rare chance, but a question could also appear like this. Now the next and the last topic that I'm going to do is today is composite key. And this is also known as a primary key, but this primary key or key field is actually made up of more than one field, 2 or 3 fields. Now how why we have such a situation. There is there might be a scenario in front of the database developer that in a entity, in a table, there is no one field that could be uniquely identified, that could be used for uniquely identifying the whole record. So एक फील्ड से प्राइमरी की नहीं बन रही, तो फिर हम दो फील्ड्स को मिलाकर यूनिक रिकॉर्ड बना लेंगे, तो वो प्राइमरी फील्ड बन जाएगी. दिस इज नोन एज द कॉम्पोजिट की. सो उस केस में आपको दो फील्ड्स को अंडरलाइन करना पड़ेगा. जैसे यहाँ प्लेयर टेबल के अंदर प्लेयर आईडी जो है वो यूनिक आईडी हमें साफ नजर आ रही है, हमारे लिए कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. लेकिन लेट्स लुक एट दिस नंबर, एंड देयर इज अ नंबर फील्ड. हाउस की डिस्क्रिप्शन है ये, रोड, कलर एंड पोस्ट कोड. Now, number field, can we make a number field a primary key? No. You might have 61 on London Road and 61 on Manchester Road. So you see that 61 might be repeating in the table again and again. So this field cannot be primary field. Road, on one road you will see many houses. Like I say, on street 8, there is a house number 61, and street 8 there is house number 62 also. So the street field cannot be used as a primary field. And you know that the color field can also not be made a primary field, as many houses will have same color. And in one postcode there are many houses. So none of these cannot be made a primary field. So then what? Then we have to find a combination of fields collectively bringing or making a primary composite key. Now look at this scenario. Number and road, color and postcode. One house number 1 on road 1, a red color and some postcode. House number 1 will not be on road 1, it will be on road 2, maybe red color and same postcode. House 1 on road 3, 1 cannot happen again. We cannot say 1 on house number 1 again. This is not possible. So you see that we might come up with this house number 2 on road 3. So you see things are repeating here again. 1 1 1 and 2, 1 2 and 3 is coming twice, and 1 is coming thrice. So individually they cannot be made primary keys, but collectively they are making a primary field, which we call it composite key. So this is the only difficult question that appears in exam. So you have to make a combination so that two fields are making a unique record. So let me give an example of a library. So book 1, book ID, student ID, and date, for example, date and time collectively being stored. Book ID 1, student ID 1. If I make this primary, so this book will not be issued again. See? And if I make this primary and not making this primary, so student 1 will not be able to take the book again, any other book, because he has taken the book and this table will not be allowed to store 1 again. So this is not right. In the same way, /1/1 2000, if a student is coming on the same day, another student wants to borrow a book, so the database is not allowing it. So none of the field cannot be made as primary key. Why? Because one book can be borrowed by many students. One student can borrow many books, and on one day many books can be borrowed. So it means there is no one field which could be uniquely identified. So there is one way is this, that I make the two unique. Now in this case, what will happen? 1 1 will not be allowed, but 1 2 will be allowed. 1 2. Student 1 is borrowing another book, and maybe on the same day or maybe on the other day. But even if we choose this one, this will be a perfect primary key. Why? Because one student can buy different books on different days. So because if I don't make this primary, this field primary, so what will happen in that case, that if I do this again 1 2, now because 1 2 combination is already exist, the database is not allowing 1 2 to come again. Although a student, if the student has borrowed one book once, that student might want to borrow the book again. Now because we made only these two fields primary, the database is not allowing. So what I will do is I will make the date and time also a part of composite key. Now, if a student has borrowed on 2nd or any other date, that person can borrow on any day or any time, because I'm storing the time as well, and time is changing every second. So every record is somehow becoming unique. Now the student, now the database has a composite key, which is allowing each record to be getting unique, because we have made the date and time to store date and time, which will be storing every second. And you know that the transaction will take a time and seconds will be changing. So the unique record will be becoming, each record will be becoming unique. And hence we can store, we can make unique records in this database.
Excuse me, sir.
G.
Sir, if we are storing time, then can't we just make date and time the primary key?
We have to make that thing unique or primary key, which also exists in another table. We have in previous example, we have one book table, and then we have member, and then we have member table, and then we have issue table. So the information I just discussed was about this. So if I make date a primary, so it doesn't exist over here. The dates are not existing anywhere. How will I find that that student ID and book ID are what? So I can do this, but the date, making date a primary will not let me or help me in any other way, because the date never becomes a profile. As I mentioned, we always store profiles as primary keys, and these profiles will have a foreign key in the other table.